Have you ever watched your child throw a massive tantrum in the grocery store and wondered where this behavior came from? Or maybe you've noticed your kid being manipulative, defiant, or just plain difficult, and you're asking yourself what went wrong. Here's the thing that most parents don't want to hear but desperately need to understand. When children display toxic behaviors, we immediately focus on fixing the child. But what if I told you that the real question isn't what's wrong with your child, but what's happening in your parenting that might be accidentally teaching these behaviors? This isn't about parent shaming. This is about awareness that can literally transform your family dynamic overnight. Today, we're diving deep into 4 silent parenting mistakes that create toxic behavior patterns in children. These aren't obvious mistakes like yelling or neglect. These are subtle, everyday choices that seem harmless but are actually programming your child's brain in ways you never intended. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly how to identify these patterns and, more importantly, how to break them starting today. If you're ready to look at parenting through a completely different lens, hit that subscribe button because this conversation is going to challenge everything you think you know about child behavior. Let's start with a fundamental truth that changes everything. Children don't wake up one morning and decide to be difficult. Toxic behaviors are learned responses to their environment. Think of your child's brain as a sophisticated recording device that's constantly collecting data about how the world works. Every interaction, every reaction, every boundary you set or don't set is being downloaded into their behavioral operating system. When we see problematic behavior, we're actually seeing the output of all the input they've received. The brilliant insight here is that behavior is always serving a purpose for the child. It's meeting some need, solving some problem, or helping them navigate their world based on what they've learned works. This means that toxic behavior isn't a character flaw in your child. It's actually evidence that they're intelligent and adaptive. They're responding to patterns they've detected in their environment. The problem is, sometimes the patterns we're unconsciously creating are teaching them strategies that don't serve them well in the long run. This perspective completely shifts how we approach behavioral issues. Instead of asking what's wrong with the child, we start asking what's happening in the environment that's reinforcing this behavior. And here's the empowering part. Since you have control over the environment, you have the power to change the programming. But first, you need to understand the 4 silent mistakes that are creating the problem. The first mistake is what I call the comfort trap, and it's probably the most well-intentioned mistake on this list. Many loving parents believe that protecting their child means eliminating all frustration and discomfort from their experience. When the child struggles with something, parents immediately jump in to solve it. When they're upset, parents rush to fix whatever caused the upset. When they encounter a challenge, parents either remove the challenge or do it for them. This approach creates children who have never learned to tolerate discomfort or work through difficult emotions. They develop what psychologists call a low frustration tolerance. What this looks like in real life is a child who melts down when they can't figure out a puzzle, screams when they have to wait for anything, or becomes aggressive when told no. These children haven't learned that discomfort is temporary and manageable. Instead, they've learned that crying, tantrums, and emotional escalation are effective tools for getting someone else to make the discomfort go away. The deeper issue here is that life is full of frustration. As adults, we face disappointment, challenge, and discomfort regularly. Children who haven't learned to navigate these experiences become adults who are easily overwhelmed, quick to anger, and struggle with resilience. They expect the world to accommodate their comfort level, and when it doesn't, they react poorly. Here's what's happening in the brain. When children experience frustration and work through it successfully, they build neural pathways for emotional regulation and problem solving. When parents consistently remove frustration, those pathways don't develop. The child's brain literally doesn't learn how to handle difficulty because it never has to practice. The solution isn't to traumatize your child or ignore their legitimate needs. It's about finding the sweet spot where you provide support without rescuing. Let them struggle with age-appropriate challenges. Acknowledge their feelings without immediately fixing the situation. Teach them coping strategies rather than elimination strategies. This builds what researchers call distress tolerance, which is one of the most important life skills you can give your child. The second silent mistake is emotional inconsistency from parents, and this one creates some of the most confusing behavior patterns in children. Inconsistency doesn't just mean changing rules randomly. It includes inconsistent emotional responses to the same behavior. One day you're calm when your child talks back. The next day you explode over the same thing. Sometimes you follow through on consequences, sometimes you don't. Sometimes you engage with whining, sometimes you ignore it. Children are constantly trying to figure out how their world works. They need to understand cause and effect relationships so they can predict what will happen when they do certain things. When parents are emotionally inconsistent, children can't develop a reliable map of their environment. This creates anxiety because they never know which version of their parent they're going to get. What happens next is really important to understand. When children can't predict their environment, they start trying to control it. They begin testing boundaries, not because they're defiant, but because they're trying to gather information about how things actually work. They might escalate their behavior to see if that gets a consistent response. They might become manipulative as they try different strategies to achieve predictable outcomes. This testing behavior often looks like defiance to parents, which can create a cycle where parents become more reactive and inconsistent, which increases the child's need to test and control. The child isn't trying to be difficult. They're trying to create stability in an unpredictable environment. Consistency doesn't mean being perfect or robotic. It means being predictable in your emotional responses and follow-through. When you set a boundary, you maintain it regardless of your mood. When you say there will be a consequence, you deliver it calmly and consistently. When your child displays certain behaviors, they can predict how you'll respond. This predictability actually gives children tremendous freedom because they understand the rules of their environment. They can make informed choices about their behavior instead of constantly guessing what might happen. Consistent parenting creates secure children who trust their environment enough to focus on learning and growing instead of managing their parents' emotions. The third mistake might surprise you because it involves giving children exactly what they're asking for, which seems like good parenting on the surface. But here's the hidden trap. When inappropriate behavior consistently gets attention, even negative attention, it becomes reinforced. Children have a fundamental need for connection and attention from their caregivers. If positive behavior doesn't reliably get attention, they'll use whatever behavior does. Think about what happens when your child is playing quietly and appropriately. Most parents take this as an opportunity to get things done, answer emails, or just enjoy the peace. The child's good behavior gets ignored. Now think about what happens when that same child starts whining, arguing, or acting out. Suddenly, they have your full attention. You might be frustrated attention, but to a child's brain, attention is attention. This creates what behaviorists call an intermittent reinforcement schedule, which is actually the most powerful way to strengthen behavior. The child learns that escalating their behavior is the most reliable way to get connection with their parent. They don't think about this consciously, but their brain makes the association. Big emotions and problematic behavior equal attention and engagement. The irony is that many parents spend long periods explaining why the behavior is wrong, trying to reason with the child, or getting into power struggles about the behavior. All of this gives the inappropriate behavior exactly what it was trying to achieve. The child gets undivided attention, emotional engagement, and often a sense that they can influence their parents' emotional state. This doesn't mean you ignore serious behavioral issues or never address problems. It means being strategic about when and how you give attention. The goal is to make positive behavior more rewarding than negative behavior. This might mean setting a timer to give your child focused attention during good behavior. It might mean having a calm, brief response to inappropriate behavior instead of a long discussion. It definitely means not engaging in power struggles that give the child a sense of control over your emotions. The fourth and perhaps most damaging mistake is unclear boundaries, often disguised as flexible or permissive parenting. Many parents believe that being strict means being unloving, so they avoid setting firm limits. They want their children to like them, or they feel guilty about saying no. Sometimes they're just exhausted from the pushback that comes when they try to maintain boundaries. But here's what children experience when boundaries are unclear or inconsistently enforced. They feel anxious and insecure because they don't understand the rules of their environment. They spend enormous amounts of mental energy trying to figure out how far they can push before someone stops them. They often become controlling or demanding because someone needs to be in charge. And if the adults aren't clearly in charge, the child feels like they have to take over. Unclear boundaries don't feel like freedom to children. They feel like abandonment. Children need adults to be the steady, reliable leaders who keep everyone safe and create predictable structure. When adults abdicate this role, children often step into it, but they're not developmentally equipped to handle that responsibility. This creates anxiety, behavioral problems, and often demanding or manipulative behavior as the child tries to control their environment. Boundaries aren't about control or punishment. They're about creating safety and predictability. They help children understand what's expected, what's acceptable, and what will happen if they make certain choices. Clear boundaries actually create freedom because children can navigate their world with confidence. Effective boundaries have several characteristics. They're clear and specific rather than vague. They're communicated calmly rather than in anger. They're consistently enforced regardless of the child's reaction. And they're age-appropriate and focused on important issues rather than trying to control everything. When you set a boundary, expect your child to test it. This isn't defiance, it's information gathering. They're checking to see if the boundary is real or if it was just a suggestion. How you respond to that testing determines whether the boundary becomes established or gets eroded. The most important thing to understand about boundaries is that they need to be maintained with emotional calm. When you get into arguments about boundaries or negotiate them in the moment, you're teaching your child that boundaries are flexible and that enough pressure can change them. This creates children who push harder and longer because they've learned that persistence often pays off. Now let's talk about what happens when you start correcting these silent mistakes. The first thing you need to know is that behavior often gets worse before it gets better. When you stop responding to inappropriate behavior in the ways that previously reinforced it, your child will likely escalate to see if the old strategies still work. This is called an extinction burst in psychology. And it's actually a sign that you're making progress. Understanding this helps you stay consistent during the challenging transition period. If your child has learned that tantrums eventually get them what they want, and you suddenly stop giving in to tantrums, they'll likely throw bigger, longer tantrums to test whether the old system still works. If you give in during this testing phase, you'll actually strengthen the behavior more than if you had never tried to change it at all. The key is having a clear plan before you start making changes. Know exactly how you're going to respond to different behaviors. Prepare yourself mentally for the fact that things might get harder before they get easier. And remember that consistency is more important than perfection. If you slip up and respond in the old way occasionally, that's normal. Just get back to the new approach as quickly as possible. Change also requires addressing all four mistakes simultaneously, because they often work together to create behavioral patterns. For example, if you start setting clearer boundaries but you're still emotionally inconsistent, your child will focus on the inconsistency rather than the boundaries. If you stop reinforcing negative behavior with attention, but you haven't taught your child how to get positive attention, they might just escalate until they find something that works. The most powerful change happens when you flip the script completely. Instead of reacting to problematic behavior, you become proactive about creating the conditions for positive behavior. This means scheduling regular one-on-one time with your child when they're behaving well. It means teaching them specific strategies for handling frustration before they're in the middle of a meltdown. It means having family meetings where you clearly explain expectations and consequences when everyone is calm and connected. You also want to model the emotional regulation you're trying to teach. Children learn more from what they observe than from what they're told. If you want your child to handle frustration calmly, they need to see you handling your frustration calmly. If you want them to respect boundaries, they need to see you setting and maintaining boundaries in your own life. One of the most important shifts is moving from punishment-based parenting to teaching-based parenting. Instead of just responding when things go wrong, You're actively teaching the skills and behaviors you want to see. This might mean role-playing difficult situations when your child is calm. It might mean reading books together about emotions and problem-solving. It definitely means having regular conversations about family values and expectations. Remember that changing these patterns takes time because you're literally rewiring your child's brain. The behaviors they've learned didn't develop overnight, and new behaviors won't either. But here's the encouraging part. Children's brains are incredibly plastic and adaptable. When you create consistent, healthy patterns, their brains will adapt to match those patterns relatively quickly. The ultimate goal isn't to control your child's behavior. It's to teach them to manage their own behavior by giving them the skills, security, and structure they need to make good choices. When children feel safe, understood, and clearly guided, their natural tendency is toward cooperation and growth. What you're really doing is creating an environment where your child can develop into their best self. You're teaching them that emotions are manageable, that challenges can be overcome, that boundaries create safety, and that positive behavior is the most effective way to get their needs met. These lessons will serve them for their entire lives. This approach to parenting requires courage because it means taking responsibility for your part in creating the behavioral patterns you want to change. It means being willing to examine your own reactions and responses honestly. It means staying calm and consistent, even when your child is testing every boundary you've set. But the payoff is enormous. You get to raise a child who feels secure, confident, and equipped to handle whatever life brings their way. If you found value in understanding these 4 silent mistakes, there are probably other parents in your life who would benefit from this perspective too. Share this video with someone who might need to hear it. And if you want more content about conscious parenting and child development, make sure you're subscribed because we're just getting started on this important conversation.